Alright, we're back. Episode number 2 with our lovely video camera. We're going to be kind of doing part 2 of the episode on improving the voting system here in the U.S. Last week we talked a little bit more about the congressional voting system and went through a couple of things, which we're going to summarize. And in the interest of time, let's kind of pick up where we left off. Matt, I'm going to let you sort of lead into a summary of the topic, and then diving into some of your thoughts about improvements to the presidential voting system.
Okay, so to kind of just give like a brief recap of what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Essentially, what I'm proposing is to have an open party list proportional representation system, where in this system, if let's say the Republican Party wins about 30% of the vote in the state of Indiana for the congressional election, they get 30% of the seats. So just to kind of get that off, and I've also we also talked about a little bit of like having automatic voter registration and all the types of ID, like identification that you can use, and all those things still apply for the presidential election.
So we don't have to rehash that. If you want to see some of the things that we went through, watch the part 1 episode of this series, and you'll kind of see what Matt's talking about here.
Yeah. So kind of moving on to the presidential election, the president will still be indirectly elected by the people through the Electoral College.
Okay.
But what I have done is essentially take the primaries and converted the whole system into a 2-round runoff / proportional representation system.
Okay.
So essentially, in the first round, that will kind of be like the primaries, like what the primaries are today. So essentially, the first round begins on the first Saturday of March, and it ends on the first Saturday of June. And essentially what I have done is I have created a rotating regional primary system with the country split into 4 different regions, just to try to kind of make it easier for all the candidates, just to kind of like travel around, make speeches, all that good stuff. So that way, instead of like trying to fly over the freaking country, you can just like...
And where do they end up going when they're flying all over the country?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, like in the system that we have now, I mean, all the primary, every state's primary is essentially all over the place.
Yeah.
So like, you could have, you typically have New Hampshire and Iowa being first.
Yep.
And in this system, it's not.
Okay.
So essentially what I have done is I have put all the western states into a region, so that would be like California, Hawaii, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, all that good stuff. The Midwest, like Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, they're all a region.
Yeah.
South has Alabama, Kentucky, Louisiana, North Carolina. And the East has Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, Virginia, and West Virginia, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
For all of you watching at home or listening to it at home, depending on how you
which medium you're on.
Yeah, just depending on which medium you're on. We will have attached all the maps and all the
kind
stuff
of
that we
breaking
have
down
here,
the
so that way you can just kind of follow along. But essentially, what I have kind of done is, essentially with this map here, I have the East starting first. No, sorry, I have the South starting first.
Okay.
And I did that because odds are it's probably going to be a little bit warmer there than it is in the other regions, so that's kind of why I did it first.
Yep.
Just to kind of make it a little bit simpler. Then I have the Midwest going up next. So essentially in this system, I have the South going first, the Midwest going second, the East going third, and the West going last.
Okay.
So in this system, essentially, the number of Electoral College votes that you get are double. So let's say Indiana, which has about 9 seats in the House and 2 seats in the Senate,
Yeah.
that gives Indiana 11 electoral votes. That number stays the same for the second round. But in the first round, it's doubled.
Okay.
And instead of like having separate primaries for every single party, it's just one massive open primary election. No caucuses, none of that stuff.
Okay.
So essentially, how the votes are distributed is basically let's take 2016 again, for example. Let's say for the Republican Party, Donald Trump won about 551,000 votes
Okay.
out of, let's say, out of a million.
Yeah.
Out of a million Republican votes. So that means Donald Trump gets 53.26% of Indiana's 22 votes.
Okay.
But, here's the thing. Instead of doing it like for all the parties, each party gets 22 votes each. So the same thing would apply to Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
So even though it's all one election and everyone votes for whatever party they want at the same time, each party gets each party gets the same number of votes.
The same, and you're talking about the same number of votes in terms of Electoral College votes
Yeah.
in this per
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
And what is the reasoning behind doubling them? Is it so you have an easier time accounting for multiple candidates per party?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For states with smaller numbers of
Yeah.
electoral. Okay. I was going to say, because doubling it doesn't change proportions at all.
Yeah. It does not change proportion at all. Not
Okay.
at all.
Right.
So, let's say if a candidate drops out of the race during the first round, which odds are that could probably happen, just like it has happened all the time
Yeah.
in the real world. all those candidates' votes will be distributed between all the party's remaining candidates as equally as possible.
Okay.
So for me, again, I'm trying to think about like how you could like. I'm trying to think about how you could.
Let me ask you this, Matt, just to help you out, kind of, because we're getting into some stuff, and I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with this stuff. I don't pay it, and this is probably like most general audience members or people who are just kind of out in the public. I don't pay that much attention to the primaries. I didn't even know how they worked. I'm just telling you candidly.
Yeah.
So I guess, what is it about shifting to this system that you think is going to give us a better, because I assume what this is driving towards is a better way to get candidates that actually represent the people. Is that part of your reasoning?
Yes.
Rather than just feeling like we're going to the polls with candidates who are just forced on us.
Yeah.
So what is it about the way you have this set up that should allow for a more accurate representation of the individual voter?
So for me, I would say to answer that kind of question, that's a really tough question to answer.
And maybe there's no good answer. I'm just
maybe
curious.
you're right. I'm not sure if there is a really good answer, or at least none that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to account for incorporating proportional representation into our system while trying to keep some semblance of tradition in this country. Because originally I was going to do what the French do, which is also a runoff system, but essentially like what they do is they vote, I think, in around, I think it's March, like last year I think they voted in March for the first round. And they have a whole bunch of candidates, and the top two candidates that perform in the first round go on to the second if no one wins a simple majority of the vote. So originally I was going to do that, but with the Electoral College run in there. And then in the end I decided, you know what, that just seems really that just seems so far-flung from what we're so used to, so I figured
it would be a big change.
Yeah, it would be a really kind of big change. So essentially, the top vote, the top candidate from each party that wins the most votes in the first round And,
this is kind of what the primaries are today. When you say first
Yeah.
round,
Yes.
that's synonymous
Yes.
to primaries. Just
Yes.
so the viewers
Yes.
understand what
Yes.
we're talking about.
Yes. So, but but what's different is instead of having a presidential convention where the where the presidential candidate gets chosen by the party, the winner of the first round for each party becomes the candidate regardless of what the party wants.
Okay. So it's adhering more to, again, the individual voters' responsibility to participate in the primary or first round, rather than saying, okay, we're going to have these primaries, and we're going to tally all these votes, and then we're going to take it to the the DNC or whatever, and say, oh, well, we're going to force Hillary Clinton on you, even though, like Bernie and Hillary.
Bernie was the more popular candidate.
Bernie was absolutely the more popular candidate, and you still have people citing some, let's call it, maybe below board reasoning behind why Hillary became the candidate, and unfortunately not unfortunately for me, but for the Democrats, it didn't work out in their favor. And perhaps a Bernie Sanders could have taken down Donald Trump, we'll never know.
But in this system, Bernie would have won. Right.
And Matt, I think that's really the essence of this. If you're a viewer, and again, we're going to post the show notes so you'll be able to see all this. It can be a little bit confusing. It's confusing for me because I'm not as well versed in it as you are. But I think the general idea is that you're trying to provide us something that will give the individual voter more of an influence on the ultimate candidate that's going to be selected in office. And using some things that are already in place, like the Electoral College, as a frame of reference for how this all gets structured. Is that fair? Okay.
So going on to the second round, that's essentially the same thing as what we kind of have today, but with a closed list proportional representation. And the reason why they closed list is because at the end of the day, there's only one candidate, so it doesn't really matter if it's...
So what you're saying is essentially, now tell me, because it's closed list and because there's only one candidate, how does the philosophy of proportional representation play out in the final presidential election, in the actual election? What is the difference between this and what we have now?
So like I said in the previous one, proportional representation means whoever wins the amount of a proportion of votes gets that proportion of seats. So let's say if Donald Trump won 50% of the vote in Indiana again, he would win 50% of Indiana's Electoral College votes.
5.5 votes. Hillary would then win. Theoretically, if she got 40%, 4 point something, and then if whoever the Libertarian candidate was got X. So basically, what you're saying is, just because you win the majority of the popular vote in a state like Indiana doesn't mean you're entitled to all 11 electoral votes. You are saying that this, again, should give a more appropriate representation of how the people actually feel. Now, I'm just curious, Matt, and I wonder, if you've got it on here, round 2, did you pull any statistics on how the 2016 election might have been different under this system?
I think I did, but I didn't put it on here.
Well, we'll see if we can't maybe find that for the audience to supplement. I would just be curious, based on how the voting played out, and that, you saw in the mainstream media for a little while.
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Even though all the Electoral College votes go to are apportioned by each party's vote, you have to keep in mind that the Electoral College is still free to vote as it chooses.
That's always been the case.
That's what I'm saying. That doesn't change, but we're just getting rid of the single, the winner-take-all system that we have. And that's what proportional representation is replacing.
And let me ask you 2 questions here, because that's a great point that you just made that probably not a lot of our audience members may be aware of. How the Electoral College actually functions. We use the term all the time. People talk, we should do away with the Electoral College, this, that, and the other. You need your whatever it is, 270 Electoral College votes. the reality is the electorates can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Just because, in the current system, just because Donald Trump, let's say, gets 53% of the vote, Hillary gets 40, the electorate can still vote for Hillary if that's who they believe is valuable or should be the president. So I don't know how many audience members actually understand the way that the college works. Now, under the proportional representation closed list round 2, given that the electoral votes would be divvied out a little bit differently in terms of numbers, would it still, and I'm just trying to do the math, would it still require a 270 or would it? No.
Okay. The reason why I don't require the 270 anymore is because there's more parties.
I was just going to say.
I would say right now, probably the best thing to have is just a simple majority vote.
Okay.
Because with more parties being involved, I mean, it's just going to be impossible to get to 270.
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was thinking, is that number would become a little bit less. Now, if you get there, great, but you could win theoretically with a 220, 150. I don't know the total number, but I think that's just a good thing to clarify. So, again, the whole theme here for this idea is that it gives us a little bit more of a voice.
And that was kind of the goal.
That if you are in a predominantly red state, you can still have an influence on the overall general election, and vice versa.
Yes.
If you vote against traditional party lines. So,
and that was always the kind of goal.
Yeah.
Because with the first past the post, or the winner take all, as it's more commonly known.
Yeah.
I mean, it really just it's just unfair.
Yeah.
Because in a country that has a population of over 320 million people now,
right,
2 parties are not going to be able to accurately represent everyone's interests. It's just not possible.
Right. Well, and again, this is, just so the audience knows, this is not us saying that this is absolutely how you have to do it, or that this system, the one that we have, is terrible, and this is what we need to do, and I don't think that's what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, this could be an option. Why don't we take a look at this? Because we do have a situation here in this country where, because of the way, let's just take the presidential election, because of the way it's set up, you just have 2 candidates, essentially, with a realistic shot of winning. Not everybody's on board for either of those candidates.
And that was especially the case in 2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Because I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
We have a scumbag and a liar.
Yeah.
And someone who's both a scumbag and actually both of them were scumbags and liars. I'm just like, you know what? I can't vote for either. I just can't do it.
Yeah. I think you had a lot of people that were like that even if they did vote, might have done so and just kind of went like this and said, "Oh my gosh,
what am I doing?"
Right, and that's, you're never going to be in a country this size. I shouldn't say never, but it's going to be highly unlikely that we're going to identify candidates where somebody can say 110% I agree with everything this person stands for.
And it's
never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
So that's not what we're trying to endeavor to either. The idea is,
we want to give people an option, like more options just beyond Republicans and Democrats. We want.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obvious that way of doing things is getting us in trouble, because it's driving that polarization further and further and further away. It's creating all this animosity and chaos between the 2 parties.
In a sense, because the more that wedge grows, and vice versa, really, the people just can't relate to one another. They just can't.
Right. And it becomes people more entrenched in their opinions versus facts, and healthy debate turns into screaming matches. You see it on television every day.
It's just like, come on, people, let's get our act together.
Yeah, I think what we would, I would be honest in this broadcast is to say, you in the audience, if you guys have thoughts, opinions, feedback, questions, I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but I would be all ears to it. Again, we're not saying this is right, wrong, or whatever. This is just some great ideas, I think, to get this conversation starting.
Yeah.
What can we do to still honor, the way
what we have in
Yeah.
this country as part of tradition, but also make an improvement so that more people who live in areas that don't really represent their beliefs, thanks to the winner-take-all system, and probably even more importantly, gerrymandering, really. I think that's really the main flaw that the winner-take-all system has.
And Matt, for the audience, why don't you define gerrymandering so they understand what it is we're talking about?
Yeah, so essentially gerrymandering is the process of which a political party rewrites the congressional districts in their favor. Because unfortunately it's not done by an independent commission or anyone else. It's done by the ruling party that controls the state legislatures.
Correct. And so they're able to essentially engineer the state in their image to best set them up to continue to hold power in that state.
Yes.
And with a proportional representation,
it removes gerrymandering entirely.
Right.
It takes it out of the equation. Because gerrymandering's been around since the 1820s. And unfortunately, if we don't change the system, that's not going to change.
Yeah. And this is no knock against,
I mean, because to tell you the truth, both parties do it.
Right.
It's not just something that the Republicans do or something that the Democrats just do. It's both.
Right. And the idea behind what we're saying is let's give more power to the people.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yes.
And I think some people may criticize and say, well, you can't rewrite. This is how the founding fathers wrote the system. Yet more power to the people and something that's more representative of the people. I think would be something that the founders would be more aligned with. I can't imagine that they were proponents of gerrymandering. Can't speak for them, but I'm just saying.
Here's the thing. I mean, gerrymandering is not built into the system. Or at the very least, it was never...
The system allows for it.
Yeah, the system allows for it.
Correct. Yeah.
As Vice President Elbridge Gerry proved in the 1820s. That will probably be a story for another day, because, I mean, I know the basics of it, but I kind of have to, do a little bit more research. So if you want to hear that story at a later time, please let us know.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to do that. Yeah.
Put in the comments section. Let us know your thoughts. If you've got questions, please let us know. But I feel like we're kind of getting off on a little tangent here.
Yeah.
So let's bring this baby in for a landing. Is there anything else? Looks like we've gotten through most of the show notes.
Yeah.
Anything else in here, Matt, that you wanted to cover before we wrap up, our two-part series on the voting system here?
Yeah. Essentially, just actually kind of building off the tangent, but also kind of bringing it back.
Yeah.
The way the votes will be counted is not necessarily in a congressional district, but on a county-by-county basis.
Okay.
So that way, because county boundaries are going to be really kind of hard to, I mean, it's really kind of hard to change them both in a
General sense and for an election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that way, it's probably going to be a little bit more reliable way of counting it than with a congressional district where essentially even parts of a county, I mean, could be split into so many different parts to be separated into several congressional districts.
Yeah.
But it also just gets rid of the gerrymandering problem.
Yeah. And I think that's the key here is we're removing, things, and again, it's not really that we're trying to say the system is set up for gerrymandering, it's just the system allows for it.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can make some small changes to remove something that we know is, I'm not going to say it's having a positive or a negative effect. I would say
negative. It's definitely a negative impact. There's no question about it.
I mean, it's a negative impact for the
American people.
Yeah, for the people to have a real influence. It's certainly a positive impact for the parties because
absolutely.
they just continue to manipulate the way that
it's kind of like the old boy network, if you will.
Right. Well, and here's the challenge, Matt. And I'll stop getting on the tangent, but the parties are the ones that vote to change the legislation. The odds of them changing the system in a way that's going to remove something that they've been doing for almost 200 years
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen without
A referendum.
or public knowledge of what's really going on. And the people.
But here's the thing. A referendum can't happen without public knowledge of it. So.
Yeah, so this is step one. We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Again, share your ideas. We're going to bring this episode to a close. Matt, you got anything else before we sign off?
No, not really. I think we're all good.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time. Good night.